60s, I'm sure, mid-60s. Homer had a practice at the holiday luncheon of going around at some point and kissing each poacher on the forehead, a sign of affection. You just have to know Homer, it was very real. On this occasion, he started around, he was kissing the poachers on the forehead and wishing them well. We had a poacher whose name was Al Walther. He was an engineer for Morrison Knudsen. And as Homer was turning the corner of the table and heading down toward him and kissing the poacher next to him on the head, Walther stood up on his chair. Were you there, Don?
Yeah, I was.
This is the funniest thing I ever saw. Walther stood up on his chair, turned toward Homer, dropped his pants, dropped his shorts, and stuck his butt right in Homer's face when he turned around. As much as to say, kiss my you-know-what. Homer got entirely infuriated, stomped back to his seat, and never again kissed anybody on the forehead. Walter thought it was so goddamn funny he couldn't stop laughing. Well, we went on to meet at the Dutch Oven. There's a picture here of us at the Dutch Oven. That's when it was out on Fairview at Maple Grove. We had a lot of meetings there. One of the things that I learned, and the picture of him, of the meeting at the Dutch Oven shows a guy named Beaver Slide Smith. And I want to tell you, we've got some fine storytellers in this club right now, and we always have had. But in my opinion, Beaver Slide was the best, because he had a kind of a folksy way about him. He strung stories out, and what I want to do is tell you just an excerpt out of what I think is the classic story that Beaver Slide ever told. It's called Rocky. It's about an all-American college center from the University of Minnesota who got married, had to get married while he was in college, had a couple of kids, and signed with the pros, signed with the Chicago Bears. And as big as he was and as good as he was all-American, he never got into play. And year after year went on, and his wife got quite upset, and the kids got quite upset because they'd look on television and he never was playing. So finally, they got down to a title game against the Green Bay Packers. And the wife said to him, "You've got to get into that game." He said, "I don't think I can." She said, "If you can't, I will." She was a big gal. So she went early to the locker room, dressed herself up before the guys got there, saw some things that made her amazed as she watched the press, and went and sat on the bench. Well, she was third string. Of course, the coach didn't know he was dealing with her. And down toward the tail end of the game, the score was tied. The two first-string centers got knocked out by a big linebacker from the Packers. And so the coach called her, thinking it was Rocky, into the game. And now I'm going to try to play you, if you'll be very quiet, the rest of the story. I can get it going here. Somebody hasn't unplugged me. Here we go.
All over the field, and I got on one of them, they hooked up. With just a few minutes to play, here's the Green Bay with a long pass for a touchdown, and they're ahead 7-3. So they had a little huddle before they lined up for the kickoff, and the Chicago coach, he told the Bears, "Now, by God, this is it. There's only about 3 minutes to go. We got to have a touchdown, a field goal will help us. So they're going to give us a short passage so you get out there and throw that ball out over the middle. Just short." And I got it worked. And they was going down the field, and they got down there to the 20-yard line. It took a lot of time. There's only seconds to play, less than a minute to play. They lined up on the 10-yard line, the 1st and 10, and there are only about 30 seconds to go. So they tried another pass, and got a big pile up from the Green Bay linebacker. Little linebacker, he got knocked colder than hell. The coach turned around, there was a big old colored boy sitting there, and he said, "Now get in there." He said, "You go right up the middle and get that quarterback. The asshole quarterback will take another net." Put him in there, and they called the play, and here he comes. Right up the middle. Run right over the center. Grabbed the quarterback and knocked the quarterback out and threw the ball out of bounds. They unwrapped the play, and the Chicago Bears center is out cold. Packed him off and called in the second string center. Same thing. Here comes this big linebacker up the middle. Runs over the center. The quarterback has to throw the ball away. And the second string center, he's out cold. So the coach comes down to Mrs. Rocky and says, "Down Rocky, you've been trying to get in there for years. Now, this is it. There's only about 6 seconds to go. This is our last play. You stop that linebacker, or we're all done." Mrs. Rocky, she knows what she's got to do. She's roughhouse with the kids and the old man enough to know how to go about the thing. So in she goes. Quarterback gets up behind her and rubs his hand up through her crotch, and she twitches a little bit. Quarterback thought, "Oh, God, old Rocky's, he's getting too old to saw for this business. He couldn't do that." Anyway, they line up, and this is the last play of the game. So this is Rocky, by some good fortune, she settles the ball without any problem. And then she stood straight up because she wants to see if this play is going to go, and she gets all that money. What she seen was a 245 pounds of black meat coming down like a freight train. They had a collision like you wouldn't believe, and they go down in a pile of arms and legs and assholes. But the quarterback had time to throw, and he completed the pass, and the Chicago Bears are champions. And all hell erupts, and the crowd rushes onto the field, and they tear out the goal post. They finally get Mrs. Rocky and the linebacker untangled, and put her on a stretcher, and get her into the clubhouse. They've already opened the champagne in there, and everybody's drinking champagne, pouring champagne on each other. Paying not a hell of a lot of attention to anything else. About 30 minutes later, Mrs. Rocky off in the side room. She begins to come back to consciousness, and she can hear a lot of ruckus going on. She finally opens her eyes. There's a big black trainer there that's standing beside her. She's got a magnum of champagne and taking a big drink, hollering and catcalling around. And she laid back, or she laid there, and pretty soon he put the bottle down. He started rubbing her tits and rolling them down. And God, she just knew she was naked as a jaybird. But she couldn't stand it any longer, and she opened her eyes and raised up and kind of looked down at herself and confirmed her worst fears. There she was, stark naked, and the old boy was taking another drink, and he'd seen her look. "By God," he said, "Rocky, old boy, you're coming around." He said, "Don't you worry. Don't you worry about a thing. You're going to be all right." He said, "I know what you're thinking, but by God, you're doing naked. And I've already got your shoulder back in the arm back in the socket and a splint on your leg." And he was rolling on her tits and rubbing down her belly, rolling on her tits and rubbing down the belly. He said, "God damn it, Rocky, I'll fix you up. So as soon as I get your nuts worked back down where they belong, you're top to top right out."
Well, that's the Rocky story. I simply offer that to you in verification that Beaver Slide Smith was our best storyteller ever. We've had some good ones. We've had a lot of good trips too. We've been to Hell's Canyon, we've been to Twin Falls, we've been to Idaho City in the winter. You see some of those pictures over here. We've been to bull trout, of course, every year, except a couple when we had fires and so forth. And I wanted to tell a story about the best poker hand I ever saw at bull trout. It occurred when we were camped over on the backside of Martin Lake. One evening, some people came to see my father and said, Arlie, Schuessler is buying pots in this game over here, and some of the younger players are getting upset about it. You think you can take care of that? I said, well, I don't know. I play a little poker, but I'll go over and take a few hands. So he went over and he played, and Schuessler kept trying to buy pots. My father, after an hour or so, got a pretty good hand, very good hand, and 5-card draw after he drew. And Schuessler obviously was proud of his hand, so the bets kept going up and up and up. My father estimated there was about $200 in the pot because Schuessler just kept bumping. Schuessler had a full boat with queens up. My father had a royal flush. The only royal flush he ever had his whole life. He lived to be 95, and that was one royal flush. And it booted Schuessler right out of the game, which none of us really cared about. Well, I want to tell you my opinion of the top 8 or 10 accomplishments of this organization in the 50 years I've been a member. I think the weekly meetings are essential because it gives us a continuing opportunity to discuss things informally. There's always a lot of frivolity, but somehow we do talk about fish and game matters, wildlife matters, natural resource matters in a pleasant setting where we can enjoy each other. Then I want to refer to what started in 1972, continued in 1997, of a structure for this organization. I don't know where we'd be without that structure, loose though it may be at times, of elections, officers were incorporated, and I think that's a major accomplishment. In the biographies that have been put out with our history, the most recent one just came out a couple weeks ago by Ken Edson, which did monumental work, but I think the 6 issues of that we've had have been a major accomplishment and helped bind us together. Next, I want to harken back several years when one of our members, I think it was Bob Taylor, came back from a trip to Michigan and said, I heard there's an organization called Citizens Against Poaching there. Maybe we ought to think about that. And so I and some others worked with Bob Salter, Jerry Conley, people at the Fish and Game, Denny Gratton, and I helped put it together. And we started the Citizens Against Poaching. I was secretary for 5 years until I joined the Idaho Supreme Court. And they gave me this plaque in appreciation for my years of service, and I really think it belongs to the poachers because this is where it originated. It seems curious to people that a club with the name Poacher would be supporting Citizens Against Poaching. I think also our membership in ISCAC, Idaho Sportsman's Caucus Advisory Council, has been very important to the future of this organization. And then sometimes we have directly opposed legislation or actions of the governor that eroded the authority of the Fish and Game Commission. I think that's been a very important activity for us. And I give bull trout a lot of credit for the spirit of this organization because once a year we have a chance to really let our hair down, and though sometimes it's taxing on our stamina and our sobriety, I think it's been very important. Finally, I think this house, which has been a struggle to get, to keep, to repair, to improve, pay the taxes on, insurance on, has been an essential ingredient of our survival. And of course we've named it for Al Klotz. And Klotz is the one I'd like to close with because I think he